Howdy. I was going to do it like Minnie Pearl, but I wasn't sure if y'all would know who that is. Okay, a few of you. Okay. Many years ago, I had a good friend who told me that she wanted to be the most famous person in the most obscure field that nobody recognized on the streets. She was a medieval studies major, and she works for Etsy now. So I guess there's still some time for her. If you're familiar with Post Malone or you've seen the video for your kid's favorite song, Old Town Road, you might be familiar with my work. So you're probably asking yourself, how did a guy from Indianapolis end up making clothing for some of the most famous pop stars in the world? I ask myself that every day. I'm kind of in disbelief about it, actually. Many years ago, I was working at a coffee shop at 54th and College Avenue called Cath Coffee and Tea House that some of you might remember, and some of you might have gone to. It's no longer there. There's a big grocery store there now. But when it was not busy during my afternoon shift, I would bring in hand embroidery projects. And I'd be working on little embroidery projects. And when customers would walk up, I would tuck it under the counter and take their coffee order. But people would always see me working on these hand embroidery projects. And one day, a customer walked in, and he had this book that he had bought at Half Price Books about the history of Western wear. I can't remember the name of it. Hillbilly Hollywood was what it was called. And he said, I think you'll really like this book because it's got embroidery. I know you like Western shirts. You like, indie music. I wasn't really into country music so much, but flipping through the pages, it brought back all these memories of seeing my dad's record collection. My dad had all these amazing country records. He's a massive record collection. So he had Porter Wagner, he had Webb Pierce, all with the performers wearing their nudie suits, their rhinestone-encrusted, embroidered suits on the covers. And it brought back all these memories of watching Hee Haw at my grandma's house when I was growing up every Sunday, and going to Nashville with my parents to Opryland. And my parents, for a brief time, were also square dancers. So I kind of grew up seeing Western wear and being exposed to Western wear and just not thinking much of it, actually. But there was some nostalgia, there was something about looking at these images in these books that brought back all these memories. And for some reason, I just thought it'd be really cool to make a Western shirt. I had never sewn anything in my life, save for a bowling-style shirt in 7th grade home ec that I got a D- on. But I went to the fabric store. I bought some fabric. I bought some pearl snaps. I borrowed my roommate's sewing machine, and I made the world's ugliest Western shirt. It was really, really ugly. It was really terrible. But there was something about that process of sewing. There was something about, delving into something that I'd never done before that was really exciting to me. And so I started making Western shirts. The coffee shop closed, and for a brief time, I worked in a drapery shop. And then the drapery shop kind of ran out of things for me to do, so they let me go. And then I got a job in a convenience store and another coffee shop after that. So all this time, I was teaching myself how to sew. This was about a decade of teaching myself how to sew, making Western shirts on the side, working these kind of menial jobs. No offense to anyone who works at a coffee shop or a grocery store. They're great jobs. But I'm glad I don't work there anymore. But in my mid-30s, I started to feel like I needed a quote-unquote real job. And I felt like I was pretty good at sewing at this point. And so I started scouring Craigslist and any jobs listings that I could find. and I found a job listing on Craigslist for the Indiana Repertory Theater. They had a position open in their costume shop. So I I applied for the job, and I met with the costume shop manager, and he hired me, much to my dismay. And so I worked at the Indiana Repertory Theater for 3 seasons. That's 3 years, so it's usually runs August through April, and then the summers were really sweet because I got unemployment and I could make whatever I wanted during the summer. But I have a very brief story that I didn't include in my original script about a moment that I was really cool to me when I was working at the IRT. And like as you've seen with a lot of people, how we connect with fashion is really an emotional experience for us. And I think we're all really lucky to be able to do this in Indiana. So we had a show. It was a show called Fallen Angels. It was a Neil Coward play. And the costume shop designer designed this dress based on a Charles James dress, and Charles James was a famous couture designer from the 50s. And it was this red silk dress, just gorgeous dress. If you're familiar with Charles James' work, you'll understand how amazing his pieces are. Our entire shop went to Chicago to see an exhibit of Charles James and studied how this dress was made. And they had x-rays of his pieces, and you could see inside of them. So we took all this knowledge that we had gleaned from this exhibit, and we made this incredible dress in the shop. And everybody in the shop had their hands on it. And it was a really neat experience. But what was really cool about it was when the performer walked out at the top of Act 2 and the lights came up, everybody in the audience gasped when they saw her dress. And that gave me goosebumps. And I was like, that's cool. That's really cool. Because I touched that dress. I helped make that dress. And it was like that high of wanting to see my work in a bigger forum. So at some point, my ex-wife, who was my wife at the time, and I had a kid. And we realized it made more financial sense for me to leave the IRT and start my own business and work from home, and then I could stay at home with him part-time and run my business. And at this point, I had amassed a pretty decent sewing machine collection, vintage sewing machine, industrial machines, which rivaled the coffee shop, or the costume shop. It's hard to remember where I worked. The costume shop that I was working at. And so in my first couple of years of being self-employed, orders weren't exactly rolling in. But in 2017, I had an opportunity to make a suit for an up-and-coming country singer named Nikki Lane. And I met Nikki Lane at the Sun King Brewery summer festival that they have every year. And I took her measurements and made her a really cool suit. So her suit was for a song called Jackpot. So I like to make suits that are, inspired by a song or a story that the performer has, or the client is not always a performer. So her suit had, vintage style slot machines and gold coins, and a playing card on the back that I superimposed her face onto the Queen of Hearts. And she was really excited when she got it. And she even wore it when she performed on Conan O'Brien. And I thought that would be the first and only time that I would ever see my work on television. A few months after that, I got a weird little message on Instagram from a stylist named Catherine Hahn that said, I would like you to make a suit for one of my clients. She didn't tell me who her client was. I get a lot of requests like these, and I'd say, 2 out of every 10 actually follow through and order a suit. So a lot of times I kind of blow people off, and I'll get around to it when I get around to it. So she texted me again or messaged me again on Instagram and said, hey, I was just wondering where we're at with that sketch. And she said, by the way, my client is named Post Malone. So I said, oh, okay, I'll get to it. So I open up my computer. I didn't know who Post Malone was. That's the point of that. I open up my computer, go onto YouTube, and I expected to see a grainy video of a performer in, like Oklahoma playing in a honky-tonk with, maybe like 10 views. Well, the first video that came up was for a song called Rockstar that had 300 million views. So I was like, this sounds like somebody important. So I called the girl that I was dating at the time, and I said, have you ever heard of Post Malone? And she said, yeah, he's on the radio all the time. And I said, well, his stylist wants me to make him a suit. And she said, you should probably do that. So I made Post Malone a suit for an event. It was the Bud Light bar tour, and it was going to live stream on Facebook. So I made this suit in March of 2018. So I tuned in to the live stream, and I was super excited to see my suit, and he was wearing a different suit. So I felt a little dejected, but the stylist loved the suit that I made and ordered several more suits for Post Malone. And I would always watch the award shows hoping to see him come out in my suit, and he never did. But in October of 2018, I was watching the AMAs, and there's Post Malone in his baby blue suit with embroidered snakes, his signature barbed wire, and lots of rhinestones. I might have cried just a little. It was in October, so the one thing I didn't expect was that on Instagram, everybody in the world decided that that would be their Halloween costume. So all these people were tagging me wearing these Post Malone like replicas. One of those was Von Miller, who actually didn't tag me because he didn't know who made it. But he had a replica of the suit with his initials on it. Von Miller is a player with the Denver Broncos. Don't ask me his position. I know nothing about football. But one of my friends got on his social media and said, like, hey, why don't you have Jerry Lee make you a suit instead of having, one knocked off by your tailor or whoever. So eventually he ordered a suit for himself, which was really cool. So I continued working with Post Malone's stylist on things for Post Malone. And in March of 2019, there's this song that you might be familiar with called Old Town Road that was at #1 on the Billboard Top 100. Post Stylist had the opportunity to work with Lil Nas X on styling the video. So she reached out to me and said, I want you to work up a sketch for Lil Nas X. So I made a sketch that was inspired by the song Old Town Road, which, another funny story, the weekend that I was talking to Catherine Hahn, the stylist, about Old Town Road, having never heard this song before, and then listening to it, I couldn't stop listening to it. It's a pretty good song. She said, I had to pick up my son from his mom's, because we have split custody. And my son gets into the car, and the first thing he says to me is, "Daddy, have you ever heard the song Old Town Road? And I whipped my head around and I said, excuse me? How do you know that song? And he's like, it's my favorite song. So anyway, about a month later, Catherine Hahn called me on the Friday before Easter weekend, and she said they approved the sketch, and we want you to make the suit. Okay, cool. But it has to be in LA by Wednesday. Now, a typical Jerry Lee suit, Union Western suit, takes about 120 hours to make, so you do the math. And it also takes it's a lot of people coming in and helping out. So I called everyone I knew, anyone who could set rhinestones, cut fringe, sew. 2 of those people have graced us with their presence today, Mary Lee Pappas and Christina Job, who are over here. And it was a very, very busy weekend in the shop, and we managed to get it done, and we got it to LA in time, and it's in the video for the longest running song at #1 in American history, which is really, really, really cool and humbling to be a part of that. So I think I'm doing a pretty good job at being the most famous person in the most obscure field that nobody recognizes on the street. Thank you, everyone.